spray. I also observed how imperceptibly my appropriate use of the medicine had become an attachment, which is exactly what the Buddha thought about desires. Without careful attention, desires easily become attachments. By now, the way clinging gives rise to dukkha should be coming into clear view. In a world of constant change, there is nothing whatsoever that can sustain our attachments. Anything we get attached to is liable to change. You can run out of nose spray. When the objects of attachment change, we feel disappointment and grief and tremendous insecurity. The Buddha said, if one longing for sensual pleasure achieves it, yes, he's enraptured at heart. The mortal gets what he wants. But if for that person, longing, desiring, the pleasures diminish, he's shattered, as if shot with an arrow. And having been conditioned to desire and acquire to allay this shattered feeling, we seek for something else to cling to. And the process continues. How many of us, when feeling sad or out of sorts, take to the shopping mall to buy something for ourselves? Shopping often works. At least it does for me. I feel better for a few hours. And then the good feeling goes away, and we look for something else to restore it. The irony is that the more we try to be secure and happy through acquisition, the more we suffer. As we discuss attachment, I want to make clear that the Buddha includes in this concept what might appear to be its opposite, aversion or repugnance. Feeling repelled by anything is effectively the same thing as attachment. Aversion is attachment of a different sort. It is a relationship to an object, albeit a negative relationship, that is difficult to relinquish. Aversion to anything depends on clinging to certain beliefs about it. My 2-year-old daughter's current favorite book is Dr. Seuss's Green Eggs and Ham. I'll have to admit I like it too. One of the two main characters, Sam I Am, hounds the other main character with a platter of green eggs and ham, insisting that he eat them. As Sam I Am pursues, the other fellow desperately tries to avoid him and the food, and in so doing ends up in a number of unpleasant and perilous situations. Finally, we learn that the guy who hates green eggs and ham has never even tasted them. And when he does, he decides he likes them. His aversion, in this case, is based on an attachment to the belief that he does not like green eggs and ham, a belief that has no basis in experience. Furthermore, his aversion causes him to suffer, just as much as clinging would. The Buddha's answer to the dual dangers of clinging and aversion is equanimity, the middle way between the two extremes. Now that we've discussed the effects of tanha and attachment, let's turn our attention in the other direction and consider their antecedent causes. What is it that makes us thirsty? Well, the simplest and most precise answer to this question is this: we misapprehend the nature of the world and ourselves. Many Buddhists writing in English, many translators of Buddhist texts, call this ignorance, to render the word out of Pali, avidya. Ignorance suggests a lack of knowledge, and certainly that is part of the problem. But in addition to not knowing, avidya suggests the further imposition of wrong ideas and beliefs onto reality. Not only do we fail to know reality, we also misknow it. Misknow is not a common word, but it is a legitimate word, and it perfectly describes what the Buddhists saw as our problem. Fundamentally, our misknowledge of reality is the attribution of permanence and substantiality to impermanence. To view as a thing something that is in reality a process. We would all probably agree that the world changes, but we might not see change in the radical way that the Buddha did. For the Buddha, change is constant and persistent. Even this lectern, which seems so solid and enduring, is subject to moment change. I mean, we'd all agree that in 100 or so years it may be reduced to dust, and we'd grant it impermanence in that way. But the Buddha would also contend that from one moment to the next, this so-called solid structure is in continuous flux, no matter how permanent it may seem. With the advent of quantum physics, the Buddha's view of the physical universe seems to be confirmed. Research at the deepest levels that science is currently able to reach suggests that the basic units of the physical universe are vibrating strings of energy. Now, while not all scientists agree with this particular theory, there does seem to be consensus that the foundational elements of the world are more like energy fluctuations than like solid, substantial things. If we had the capacity, we might perceive this lectern as a mass of vibrating energies. Like modern physicists, the Buddha viewed the cosmos as a complex array of processes rather than as a set of things. So the Buddha is not just saying that things change. He is saying that change is the only thing there is. Of course, many people will acknowledge the reality of change and will wonder what's so terribly insightful about this claim. The Buddha's innovation is in the thoroughgoing way he applies this concept. Many persons who acknowledge the world's transience try to sneak permanence through the back door by declaring a part of existence exempt from change. The concept of God is one such effort, or the concept of the soul, as we saw in the Vedanta tradition of Hinduism, is another. The body perishes and dissolves, but somehow the soul lives on. Perhaps the Buddha's most distinctive contribution to the world's religious thought is his rejection of this belief. According to the Buddhist teaching, there is no permanent, immortal, substantial soul. It is nowhere to be found. This feature of the Buddhist thought is called anatta in Pali. But the Sanskrit term makes a clearer impression. The Sanskrit is anatman, and that term makes evident that the Buddha is denying the Atman, the Hindu idea of the soul or true self. Both anatta and anatman are translated as no self or not self. Of all the intriguing aspects of the Buddha's vision, anatta must surely be the most difficult to understand, even for Buddhists. What the Buddha meant by this term is greatly debated throughout the history of Buddhist philosophy. We haven't the time to discuss those debates, but let me say a few things about how I understand this feature of Buddhism. It should help to remember that fully realizing the truth of anatta, according to the Buddha, depends on gaining the insights disclosed in enlightenment. So, like the idea of dukkha, you won't completely get it until you're awakened like the Buddha.